Bolt fam, we've got to take a deep breath today, because this one is heavy. We've got a piece of news that brings hope, another that puts a knot in your stomach, and a quiet move that could decide the whole stretch run. There's a key player coming back, a familiar name on the radar, a defense sending a message, and of course a full-blown saga around our quarterback. None of this is simple. So buckle up, because you won't believe what we've got lined up. Sit back, drop a like, and let's dive in. Stick with me, because every detail could change the entire Chargers season. And while we're still catching our breath after that intro, there's something that completely changes the way we look at this Chargers offense: the backfield. Because let's be honest, this season has been punch after punch on the injury front, and few hits hurt more than losing rookie Omarion Hampton, out since Week 5 with that ankle issue. A lot of people looked at that and thought, there goes the identity of our run game. But football is crazy, and sometimes the worst news opens the door for a huge surprise. While Hampton was out, Kamani Vidal absolutely took off. He embraced the opportunity, earned carries, earned trust, and most importantly, earned the respect of the fan base and the locker room. Right now, we're talking about a running back who's gone over 500 rushing yards in just over 9 games. With that physical, patient running style, but also the burst to hit an explosive run whenever the offensive line gives him even a sliver of daylight. Now picture this: Hampton coming back healthy, with that explosive profile in space, and Vidal keeping the hammer roll, the guy who punishes a defense over 4 quarters. That's Harbaugh ball at its core. That's controlling the clock, taking pressure off Justin Herbert's shoulders and keeping the defense fresher so it can attack even harder in the second half. If the interior of the offensive line can just be competent, this duo can completely reshape the final stretch of the season. Before the injury, Hampton had already proved he wasn't just hype. More than 300 rushing yards on 66 carries, touchdowns, a successful run rate near half of his attempts, plus the ability to catch the ball in the flat and on little routes out of the backfield, always turning checkdowns into real threats. He's not just a runner, he's a playmaker. The big question now is volume management. How do you balance touches between a rookie who has everything to become a star and a Vidal who proved in the fire that he deserves his role? If the staff gets that balance right, if the offensive line holds up just enough, this Hampton-Vidal backfield might be the lightning bolt this Chargers offense needed for the most brutal part of the schedule. And I'm throwing it back to you, Bolt fam. Would you keep a true committee or hand Hampton 20 carries a game the moment he's back? And while we're getting excited about this backfield being reborn, another storyline pops up that nobody really saw coming, but makes perfect sense once you look at where we are in the season. Because let's be real, the offense has its issues, but the defense is the engine that's keeping this campaign alive right now. Even Jesse Minter's unit, though, has its limits, especially with the brutal stretch the Chargers are about to face. That's why a familiar name resurfacing behind the scenes hits so differently and makes you think, is this the missing piece that makes everything click? Kyzir White. Yeah, that Kyzir White. The versatile, physical, smart linebacker who already wore powder blue knows exactly how this fan base reacts, how this locker room works, and how heavy that logo on the helmet really is. Out of nowhere, the Titans and White announce a mutual separation, and the whole league starts connecting the dots. He's free, and the Chargers need exactly the skill set he brings. Because right now, Minter's defense lives in attack mode. Calculated blitzes, pressure created through disguise, quick rotations. But with 5 straight games that basically feel like playoff matchups coming up, you need depth. You need a guy who diagnoses fast, chases sideline to sideline, doesn't get torched in the flat or in short zones. And White, at full strength, gives you all of that. He's not a superstar, but he's the kind of player who stabilizes a unit. And stability in a stretch like this is worth gold. Think about it. A guy who already has chemistry with the franchise, who can line up inside or outside, who's played Will and Sam, who can drop into coverage and still step up to muddy gaps in the run game. That gives Minter freedom to get creative with fronts, rotate his starters less, and protect the defense from the late-season wear and tear that always shows up. And of course, there's the emotional side. Fans love a reunion. Players love going back to a place where they've felt valued. Coaches love a veteran who walks in already speaking the language of the playbook, not needing a month just to catch up. Throw that into an all-out wildcard race, and you see how big this opportunity really is. If the Chargers truly see this season as alive, and Harbaugh makes it very clear that he does, a move like this isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. And if the front office is on the same page, we could see an addition that changes the entire tone of this defense overnight. But hold on, because this still isn't the most dramatic thing that happened today. Right in the middle of all this talk about reinforcements, something else hit the fan base at a much deeper level. The defensive identity finally showed up the way everyone was waiting for. That 31-14 win over the Raiders wasn't just a breather. It was a statement. A tough, physical, aggressive response, especially against the run. Just 31 rushing yards allowed. That doesn't happen by accident. That's real change. That's tape that makes any offensive coordinator hesitate before calling an inside run on early downs. And why does that matter so much? Because for this Chargers team, everything starts with the defense staying alive long enough for the offense to figure it out. We already know the offensive line is inconsistent, that Herbert is being forced to create a lot of stuff off script, and that this offense isn't going to blow people out every single week. So if the defense becomes a wall, the entire game flips. And what we saw against Las Vegas was exactly that. A front seven blowing up gaps, linebackers flowing with speed, and a secondary that played more disciplined football. That becomes even more important when you look at what's coming. Chiefs, Eagles, Texans, Broncos. 4 offenses that aren't top 10 in rushing yards this season. 4 teams that become a lot more predictable if you choke out their run game. And a one-dimensional offense against Jesse Minter? That's the dream. That's the perfect setup for an aggressive game plan full of disguises and pressure coming from everywhere. But let's be honest, we've already seen the other side of that coin. The Jaguars game back in Week 11 still stings. 192 rushing yards allowed, a defensive front getting steamrolled, and Herbert under constant pressure. That was the nightmare. Rock bottom. The exact blueprint of what cannot happen again. And maybe that's exactly why what happened against the Raiders felt so significant. It was the answer. The correction. The silent promise that this team understands its survival depends on that adjustment. And if this level of run defense is real, not a fluke, not a one-off, then the Chargers head into this final stretch with something that felt impossible a few weeks ago. Control. Control of the tempo. Control of the scoreboard. Control of their own destiny. Because when the defense keeps the game close, all Herbert needs is a moment. One drive. One spark. And that's when, Bolt fam, the conversation turns back into hope. But don't get too comfortable, because what comes next shakes everything up. While the defense is sending signs that it can carry this team when it matters most, the biggest uncertainty of the entire season just blew up in the Chargers' face at the worst possible time. Because whether we like it or not, everything in this franchise revolves around Justin Herbert. And when the face of your team gets caught in a spiral of physical issues, every update feels like a storm. This time, it wasn't just a scare. It was surgery. It was a fracture. It was the kind of headline that makes even the most optimistic fan hold their breath. The painful part is that it almost felt inevitable. Before the bye, Herbert had already left 2 games limping, came back on pure grit, and the offensive line simply wasn't doing enough to keep him clean. The offense got predictable, reads got tighter, and defenses realized they could collapse the pocket without paying a heavy price. Then came the game against the Raiders. Big shot. Fracture in his non-throwing hand. Surgery the very next day. The entire NFL turned its eyes to Los Angeles instantly. Analysts, insiders, former players, everyone asking the same thing. Is this the end of the playoff push? Dan Graziano from ESPN put it bluntly. This is the kind of injury that shifts the entire playoff race. Because it's not just about playing. It's about practicing. It's about trusting the snap. It's about mechanics. Pain. Ball security. The fear of the next hit landing on that hand. Herbert says he wants to play against the Eagles, and nobody doubts that. He's ultra competitive. He's played through fractured ribs, played hurt, made magic on the move. But the question is, at what cost? With a closing stretch that includes Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston, the Chiefs, and the Broncos, any small drop-off can be fatal. Deep down, the staff knows that. That's why Trey Lance getting short yardage reps in practice matters. It quietly screams that a plan B is being built in the background. And there's more. This whole situation ripped open some old wounds. The season started 3-0. Clean sweep of the AFC West. The dream was alive. And then came inexcusable losses to teams that weren't even really in the fight. Now the Chargers have no margin left. They can't afford to lose rhythm. They can't afford to drop winnable games. And they definitely can't afford a half-speed version of Justin Herbert. But there's an emotional side to this too. If there's one quarterback in this league who can play through pain and still carry a team on his back, it's him. If there's one locker room willing to rally around that, it's this one. And if there's one fan base that refuses to walk away when things get ugly, it's the Bolt fam. That bond might be the one thing that keeps the flame alive when everyone on the outside is already calling it over. Bolt fam, after a day like this, it's impossible not to feel both the weight and the power of this stretch run. Hampton coming back, Vidal's immediate impact, the possible return of a familiar face, the defense finally looking like what it was supposed to be, and of course, all the uncertainty tied to Herbert. These pieces together can either drag this team down or launch it forward. This season was never simple, never comfortable. And maybe that's exactly what makes it feel so much like us. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe in this turnaround? Smash that like button, drop your take in the comments, and let's fight for this all the way to the end.